Good morning. Today is Monday, January the 27th of the year 2025. We have a packed episode today. There is a lot to talk about because the man did a lot. And by the man, I'm talking about Donald J. Trump. He did a lot this past week. And I thought it'd be important for us to talk about it. It's a current event that's happening in our country. And I think there is a lot of hubbub around the things that he's doing, the things that he's not doing. And I thought we would take all the different media and I guess put it into this hour and a half long podcast to just discuss what is going on in our country and how to view it through a biblical lens. I can't pronounce that sometimes. So this morning, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a spicy one. You are listening to the Dear Church podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang.
I'm Pete Hegseth.
Did he get affirmed?
Yeah, last night.
Wow, good for him, Pete.
Yeah, JD Vance had to do the tie-breaking vote.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell voted no on the Republican side. So JD Vance had to come in and cast his tie-breaking vote. So it's 51-50. Pete Hegseth gets nominated.
So the senators got to go home today. They have to come back on Monday.
It gets confirmed, yeah?
They got to go home. They have to come back on Monday.
I think so, yeah.
Where are we? Oh, and we have with us Pastor Eugene. And actually, Brian is manning all the media aspects today. The camera, the sound, and...
Cameras
and the sound. And as impressive as that is, if there is a single mess up, you know exactly whose fault it is. So today is the 1 week anniversary, if you will, of Liberation Day. I think as Donald Trump named January the 20th.
He's called it Liberation Day for real?
Yeah. He called it that. Yeah, I thought that was funny. But Liberation Day for America. The moment that America's golden age began, and that was January 20th, according to his words. But in the wake of his inauguration as the 47th president of the United States, a lot of things have happened already. In 1 week, a lot of things have happened.
Too much news. Can't keep up.
You really can't keep up. He's like almost signing faster than I can read these executive orders. And so, I mean, I guess I think I could also sign faster than I read, so... But I thought it might be important for us to know what's going on in our country, digesting some of the things that have happened, and maybe understanding through a biblical lens how we should be viewing these events. And, you know, it's funny because when you look at legacy media, oftentimes you'll find one story, then you'll go to independent media sources and find a different perspective. And so where I do think it's important for us to read across the board, I think it can be confusing for some people, for many people, for everyone, actually. And so I thought that's where we can come in and help and assist and possibly point to resources that we think are not only giving the news as news outlets should, but is it from a correct worldview? Is it from a biblical worldview? And if it's not, which one is the closest? If it's not, how can we look at this news and assess it from a biblical worldview? I think that's kind of what we want to do.
Yeah, after Dr. Filson visited us last week and you really became like gung-ho pre-sup.
Who did?
Right? You could hear it in his voice.
No. Yeah. No.
You should do a demon. No, excuse me. You should do a demon.
Demon is doctorate of ministry. People are going to think it's like a...
That's not what I meant.
Yeah, I should do a doctorate of ministry. Maybe if I was, if I was in the correct life stage. But again, I think just speaking of worldview, we want to make sure that we are viewing things through a biblical lens. And so just kind of wanted to go over some of the highlights of Trump's presidency thus far. And this is all from whitehouse.gov, by the way. That's the brunt of where we'll be getting our stuff. But, a lot of people have been talking about executive orders. And I wanted to just define what an executive order was. is, and this is from the American Bar Association, an executive order is a signed, written, and published directive from the President of the United States that manages operations of the federal government. They are numbered consecutively, so executive orders may be referenced by their assigned number or their topic. Proclamations, which are also signed and numbered consecutively, communicate information on holidays, commemorations, federal observances, and trade. Administrative orders, example, memos, notices, letters, messages, are not numbered, but are still signed and are used to manage administrative matters of the federal government. So the difference between executive order and legislation is that executive orders is not legislation. They require no approval from Congress, and Congress cannot simply overturn them. Congress may pass legislation that might make it difficult or even impossible to carry out the order, such as removing funding. But legislation and executive orders are not the same thing. And only a sitting president may overturn an existing executive order by issuing another executive order to that effect. And we saw a lot of executive orders being overturned by Trump in the first day even on January the 20th. And so I thought we would get into just the highlights of this past week. And this starts actually on the day of, actually 15 minutes before the presidential inauguration. We read news of Joe Biden pardoning certain individuals. Joe Biden, I think 15 minutes before the inauguration, preemptively pardoned his family. More specifically, James Biden, his brother, his brother's wife, Sarah Biden, sister Valerie Biden, and her husband, John Owens, and another brother, Francis Biden. He preemptively pardoned them. And he also pardoned Dr. Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, and members of the House committee that investigated January the 6th. So he did this right before the inauguration. And, you know, we hear about pardons all the time, and I think we learned about pardons like in 5th grade or so. But this idea of a pardon, it's a power that the president has to grant reprieves for offenses against the United States, to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. So it's legal forgiveness, right? It ends the punishment, restores rights, and it cuts off whatever they're doing right now, and also restricts future presidents from punishing them for the same crime. I'm curious, though, is this a biblical concept? No, because I think, you know, when we hear about pardons, you know, we think of this in like the song, like "Pardon for Sin and a Peace that Endureth," that one. Mm-hmm. And we think pardon and forgiveness, like we think forgiveness, oh, it's so Christian, it's such a good thing.
Yeah.
But for a pardon, there's no justice in that. You're just being forgiven for what? Just because the president wants you to be forgiven. So, and granted, it's only for federal, national level crimes. You know, is that a thing? Like, is that a biblical thing? Should we be like celebrating pardons?
Yeah, I mean, I heard a story once. I'll start off with that.
Yeah,
it was a pretty good story. I mean, it was a true story, but so this guy got a ticket, goes to the court offices, and then he's like pleading for mercy, you know, blah, blah, blah. I got this situation. I can't afford this.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad. And then the judge is pretty strict, pounds the gavel. You owe this much in fines. He's like so mad. He's cussing on his way out.
Yeah.
And then the next guy goes in with a ticket. And he goes, you know, you could have shown a little grace. And then the judge says, that's not grace. You know, because he was implying that grace would have been to let him go or not let him not pay the ticket.
That's what the offender was implying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next guy. So the judge is like, that's not grace. Grace is if you paid for his ticket.
Chew on that one.
Yeah. Seriously, chew.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's a little thick. Yeah. Chew the cud.
Yeah. I've heard that before.
Yeah. So a lot of people have been making these correlations between, you know, how we have been pardoned by God. And that's a presidential pardon. The president pardoned his son, just like God pardoned us, his children, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
That's not a good correlation. In fact, it's not even a metaphor to keep. Jesus took on all our sins.
Yep.
Grace was given because the punishment we should have had, Jesus took in its entirety. The presidential pardon is not equivalent to the pardon we have received by God, because the sins that we have committed was imputed onto Jesus Christ. And at the same time, his perfect righteousness was imputed unto us. And so that's what we believe. And so, yeah, don't get fooled. And I think what you said in the beginning was good. We want to measure this in a biblical worldview, meaning we want to continue to study the Bible. I think when you think that we know the Bible, we know Christianity, it's about mercy or something like that crazed Bishop S. said in the, the prayer, National Day of Prayer.
Oh, yeah.
It's about mercy. People are like, oh, you Christians should be about mercy. It's like, because I read that in the Bible. It's like, well, no, I don't think you read that in the Bible. And secondly, you don't know the Bible. First, if you think that you know the Bible in its entirety without continual study, I think you are in a wrong place. So it's a good thing that you mentioned it, because what are we doing here? We're studying the Word of God. We're studying and going deeper and then trying to figure out what the Word of God has for us today, how it shapes us, and that's our standard. Someone once said, if you want to counter disinformation and misinformation or just false information, you should just put out more information. I think this is what libertarians think. I think this is what Elon Musk said, I think, at one point. Don't quote me on that, but a lot of people were saying that.
Maybe I said
And
that.
while that is helpful, it's not entirely true. More information doesn't necessarily lead us to the truth. And so you can be inundated with all this information. You could just end up confused as well, right? You could be like, well, all I saw in the news, all the information I got from my TikTok or, social media feeds from Facebook or Instagram was Elon Musk's Heil Hitler salute. I think he's just a bad guy. He's just a bad guy. That's all I see. So if that's all you've been inundated with, then you don't know anything about, let's say, the executive orders that were put out, any kind of presidential action, meaning the pardons and the commutations that he put out. And so those are things that you wouldn't have known. So maybe more information is not necessarily the singular factor that would free us. You don't want less information, yes, but you want that information put up, next to the truth, next to a standard. And our standard is the biblical standard. So we don't want to reduce that biblical standard just to say, oh, it's just 1, 2, 3. But we want to say, what does this say in the Bible? What does the Bible say about this topic? And let's continue to study. Let's be like the Bereans, And so that's hopefully what we're doing here on this podcast too.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I think that's the thing. But, some people might think, well, your podcast is biased. You guys are all right-leaning conservatives. You guys are biased. And I would say that we are biased, but I would hope that our bias is a biblical bias. Got him. And
yeah. Just to say that you don't have a bias is kind of like, to say that you don't have a bias is to
say
probably
that you don't,
destroy your own walls.
Oh.
You have nothing to protect yourself with. You have nothing to stand on to say you don't have a bias. Of course you have a bias. I mean, at least we make ours known.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what your biases are. It's just you refuse to acknowledge that.
Everyone has one.
That's kind of unfortunate, though.
Yeah. But again, I think that's the purpose of this episode. As we talk about pardons, and I'm going to get into Donald Trump's pardons in a minute, and I think there was some controversy with that as well. But Biden's pardons were extremely controversial in that they were preemptive. Anthony Fauci is not convicted of anything. The general is not convicted of anything. Milley, yeah. The J6 guys are not convicted of anything. And his family is not convicted of anything. Yet he issued pardons to them. Mm-hmm. And I believe General Milley was the guy that said, no, it wasn't General Milley. Someone else that he pardoned said, why would I take a preemptive pardon? Like that doesn't make any sense. I'm not guilty. But they did.
Peter Navarro.
Yeah. And so what's going on with that? I mean, we talked about, but is pardons even a biblical thing? Because we talked about grace. But see, the way that grace works is that someone earns that grace, right? So in our faith, in the true faith, Christ earns the grace for us, and that's what we're given, the salvation in grace, through grace. But pardon is just you're just forgiven for apparently no reason. Just like the president just wants to cover you. That's what it is. You're on the president's good side, and that's what it might seem like.
It is at the pleasure of the president that he gives pardons. Meaning, if he feels like you've been unjustly dealt with,
okay,
he can issue a pardon. And so people have written to presidents in times past to say, look at the sentencing I got, it was too extreme, or the judgment was unfair. You have the power to unilaterally overturn this and, make this wrong right. And so people would appeal to the president. So the president has this power. And so obviously it could be abused, which is what a lot of people are probably thinking when they saw preemptive pardons. Now, preemptive pardons, we will see if it's constitutional. So one thing that Biden was able to do in his 4 years was really test the boundaries of our constitutional order. And this is what people have always said about Trump, but this is obviously projection. Trump didn't push the constitutional boundaries. Biden did.
Yeah.
There's nothing Trump did that pushed it. People just didn't like his rhetoric. But the things that he was enacting and doing were constitutional. I think people that kind of look at his actions now, like, yeah, I guess. And then they like, what about the Heil Hitler salute? I don't know. So they just have to misdirect and move on. But I will say that preemptive presidential pardons were not really a normative thing. I mean, if you look at even Ford's presidential pardon of Nixon before anything happened, people knew he was guilty. People knew he was guilty. Like, this guy is guilty. But because they didn't want, the nation to be divided and go into an uproar with all the court proceedings, and the nation's dignity is degraded when you put a president on trial. And so he gave him the presidential pardon. And so there's that mindset that someone could have, and people didn't really contest it. But this one is really pushing it. Like, what did his family members do? What did, Fauci do? What did Milley do? And by the way, what is his name? Vindman? Vindman didn't get pardoned. His wife came up very, very heartbroken and upset that he didn't get a pardon. Anyway, these are all like political operatives within the Biden circle, and almost every single one of them got a, presidential pardon.
Alexander Vindman, yeah. So because, people have been saying that he lied under oath when he gave his congressional testimony. But these are all the things that we are getting to see. And the family presidential pardon is kind of insane. It is kind of insane because this is exactly what they said in 2020 or something like that, when they said, the president's going to pardon his children because they're absolutely guilty. And then some guy famously on the interweb said, who doesn't need a presidential pardon? Hunter Biden. And, that was a big L. Yeah, but what Biden said concerning his family was, and I quote, he said, they have been subjected to unrelenting attacks and threats motivated solely by a desire to hurt me, the worst kind of partisan politics. He said he had no reason to believe that these attacks will end. And that's why he gave these preemptive pardons, and that's from PBS. And Biden also said, even when individuals have done nothing wrong and will ultimately be exonerated, the mere fact of being investigated or prosecuted can irreparably damage their reputations and finances. So that's why he's pardoning his own family.
Yeah, it's true. What he's saying is true. Only, but he's leaving out the main part is where there's actual evidence against him. The Hunter Biden laptop is a story that appeared in 2020, and 51 intelligence agency and former intelligence agency agents and officers, they signed this document saying this is Russian disinformation.
Yep.
And now we know it's not. Now, I think we talked about this. It's not Russian disinformation. The stuff in the laptop, whether it's true or not, it belonged to Hunter Biden. And the stuff in the laptop is incriminating. There's some really, really bad stuff that would implicate the president or the former president now and his entire family with emails, text messages, WhatsApp messages that has gone from them to foreign entities like China and things like that. This is really bad stuff. It's not just the really morally bankrupt stuff that Hunter did that he recorded on his laptop. But this is like national security stuff. And when people got access to it, like, we have to print it. The Biden administration and the government is the one that stopped this information from going out. These 51 intelligence agency agents lied. They lied by signing this document. And by the way, their security clearances were revoked on day one of Trump's presidency, which is just a boss move. This is like the best thing that you could do. And so he did that, as well as John Bolton's security clearance, which is the best thing to do, as well as his security detail and Anthony Fauci's security detail. So there's just so much that's going on.
Yeah.
But I'm saying this is all good stuff. This is good stuff because I remember talking with somebody and he was so just defeated. And I said, the thing about the Christian faith is that even if you try to keep it under wraps, even if there's a power structure that is completely against the truth, the fact that we know that Jesus reigns is that the truth will eventually come out. Maybe not in 4 years like it has now, but it will come out because Jesus is the light and the truth will always come out and he is truth. And so there will be vindication. And so this is something that Christians put their hope in. And so you shouldn't be defeated. That's why we can always continue to fight with our heads up.
When you said that it was a good thing that their security detail was pulled, what do you mean by that? Are you saying it's a good thing that they might get attacked, or what do you mean that it's a good thing?
No. Both John Bolton and Anthony Fauci had security detail on them by the government, meaning the taxpayers funded it.
Yeah.
They are no longer working for the government. They're retired. Like Anthony Fauci's retired too. What they want, if they want security detail, they should get it themselves. They should pay for their own stuff. Right. Why should the taxpayer get burdened by these? What we believe now is are people who did these criminal behaviors, and so we don't want that. I don't see why they would even deserve any kind of security detail. They're not even like elected official.
No.
That's like past their tenure. It's not like he's the past president. Past presidents get security detail for the rest of their lives.
Right? Yeah.
But then these guys are not that. So the fact that they had it is weird. And secondly, why are the taxpayers paying it? That's weird. And plus, they've gotten extremely rich over the years with the things that they've been peddling. So it's not like they're poor. Yeah. There's no reason for them to get any kind of paid security detail by the taxpayers. That's what I think. And that's what the president thinks too. He is the man of the people.
So Joe Biden, on the final moments of his presidency, issued these pardons, and it didn't go unnoticed.
15 minutes before his time is up.
You're sneaking in last-minute plays. That's what you're doing.
I mean, it's sus.
Yeah, it's very sus. But, not only did Biden's pardons get a lot of flack, but Trump's pardons also got a lot of flack. There are actually two groups that I wanted to talk about today, unless you wanted to say something.
No, good. There's a lot. There's so much.
There is so much to cover.
But we should focus on the Elon Musk Heil Hitler salute, right? Because that's all the media, the whole week, that's what they focused on. So that's great.
It's because they're trying to draw people's attention away, It's really funny. It's always Hitler. They always compare it to Hitler.
always
There's
Hitler.
nobody else. No Mussolini. No other like
No
weird-
Mao Zedong.
No, always Hitler, because Hitler is like the number one evil guy in the history of the world, and they have to always compare him to the
No
most evil
Stalin.
person. No,
Can't do the commies.
yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
But there are two groups that Trump pardoned, and the first I want to go to the from the small to the great. 23 anti-abortion activists is what the news outlets will say. It's funny how legacy media always calls them anti-abortion instead of pro-life. It's funny how even that term is phrased that way. But a day before the March for Life rally in Washington, D.C., which was Friday the 24th, on the 23rd, the Thursday, President Trump pardoned 23 peaceful pro-lifers that were put into jail by the Biden administration, unjustly some may add, in using the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, the FACE Act,
Face Act.
to prosecute the protesters. This act, by the way, in case for people that may be unaware of the FACE Act, is a federal law that protects people to go to abortion clinics without fear or intimidation, signed in 1994 by Bill Clinton. And so some of these pro-lifers were prosecuted for being involved in a blockade of Washington, D.C. Reproductive health care clinic. But evidence shows that they actually were peaceful. People were not blockading. That's what some evidence shows. And so,
I mean, the blockade, it was semantics where if you stayed within a certain number of feet in front of the door, they would consider you blocking. And so they would get them on that. Oh, you were 6 feet from the door, so you were blocking. We're going to put you in jail. Yeah.
so they were put in jail, and 23 of them were pardoned by President Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you cry?
I didn't cry. No.
So last year when Virgil Walker came and spoke for our all church retreat, I give the Saturday morning devotions whenever a retreat speaker comes. And so that Saturday morning, it was that Friday where we found out that this judge sentenced this lady who had medical issues to multiple years in jail because she protested and she was pro-life. And then she had this snide remark, since one of the tenets of your religion is pro-life, I hope that you will live then. When the husband pleaded, please, she needs constant medical attention. She's going to die. And this judge just, by the way, Clinton appointed judge, but this judge just, was it Clinton or Obama? One of them. But with no remorse, would put her in jail for the FACE Act, for going against the FACE Act. The FACE Act is a terrible, terrible thing. By the way, if we went into it, it was under the auspices or the cover of protecting churches, but it's not. It's always used to protect abortion facilities, and it's a truly evil thing that they put on us with this legislation. But she's one of the people that are freed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm so happy that he did this. It's one of the things that I am very, very grateful for, that he would free the pro-life. So if we had to make a retraction, if we had to say this was a mistake, I would say in our podcast, this was one of them. I said in the podcast, maybe you don't want to vote for President Trump because he's not pro-life and he said some things that weren't really pro-life. If you're upset, maybe that gave you grounds to not vote for him. Yeah, I take that back. I take that back because this president is the most pro-life president.
Yep.
Even in just the first 5 days of his presidency that we've ever had. We've ever had, hands down. There was no one else that was more pro-life than this president that we have now. And so I praise God for that.
Not only president, but vice president as well at the March for Life rally, which happened this past weekend, Friday the 24th. He was quoted as saying, "If you're not willing to stand up to the left on abortion, you can't be trusted on anything else. The pro-life position is the pro-people position, and I'm proud to be 100% pro-life."
Yeah, and so that's something that we've been saying for so long. If you are not pro-life, then there's something wrong with your moral character. You don't know the basics and the foundation of what God has given us This is in our Declaration of Independence. It's written in because our founding fathers all believed in it. The country believed in it. We were founded on it, meaning this is our foundational belief. President Trump wasn't there at the March for Life rally, but he did give a recorded speech. And in it, he said, I quote, "I know your hearts are warm and your spirits are strong because your mission is just, very, very pure, to forge a society that welcomes and protects every child as a beautiful gift from the hand of our Creator." Could you ever have imagined a president of the United States say something like this, so blatantly and so expressly pro-life and so Christian? And so I'm very thankful for what he has done in the past 5 days. And I think if you're a Christian, you have to at least concede that point. This president is more pro-life than anybody else.
So one of the, I guess, disagreements that someone may have with this pardon, right, is the fact that these people that were freed, these people are crazy. They blocked the abortion clinic. They harmed people. One was even found to have 4 fetuses in her apartment or something like that. Like, how would you respond to that? Because to a Christian, they might think, well, I get it that abortion is bad, but these people, they went above and beyond. They harmed people. Like, we don't do that as Christians.
Yeah, we don't do that as Christians. And I think President Trump issuing blanket pardons. So I can't speak to every case, right?
Right.
I mean, we could. I guess we could break it down to all 23 cases, or all 1,500 for the J6ers. But
yep.
The fact that he's issuing these blanket pardons is not simply in response to Biden giving blanket pardons. By the way, he gave more pardons in multiples than any other president behind him. Any other president. He gave maybe like 8,000 plus pardons or something like that. Or the closest, I think, way back when was like maybe 1,000 something. I'm not sure. But, and so some people might think this is in response, like, this side, that side. But I don't think so. I think it is saying these are promises that I made. I'm going to protect the pro-life community. I'm going to, do this for this community, do this for that community. So he came out. And I believe that the pardons are just the beginning for his support of these agencies.
Yeah. And I think they were harmful, they were violent is a false narrative.
Well, I mean, this is what we all believe. We believe that they've been accused of trumped up charges, and they are false charges. So you could say that this is what they were charged on, but then we kept on hearing things like, "Well, that's not what happened. This is false." So when the president pardons, that's it. I mean, put it in the back pocket. You're done.
Yeah.
You can't charge them for that crime again.
Yeah. So this is a beautiful thing that we see, pro-lifers being freed from unjust convictions. The other pardon, the big group of pardons, was a little bit more controversial. He commuted the sentences this is from the White House, commuted the sentences of the following individuals convicted of offenses related to events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January 6th, 2021 to time served as of January 20, 2025. And he gives a list of names. And in the White House Post writes, grant a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to all other individuals convicted of offenses related to events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January the 6th, 2021. And this is roughly 1,500 to 1,600 people, as reported by the NBC, by NBC, that were involved in the January 6th storming of the Capitol. If you remember, the storming was in response to the claim that the 2020 election was rigged against Donald Trump. And this, I guess, pardoning of 1,500 to 1,600 people has has drawn an uneasy reaction even from some Republican politicians. Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina said he can't just agree with the move, adding that it raises legitimate safety issues on Capitol Hill. Another Senator, James Lankford from Oklahoma, told CNN, I think we need to continue to say we are a party of law and order. I think if you attack a police officer, that's a very serious issue, and they should pay a price for that. At the time that Trump issued these pardons, there were about 700 defendants who never received prison sentences or had already completed their sentences, meaning pardons or commutations would have little practical impact on them beyond restoring voting rights and gun rights for those who were convicted of felonies. I think the issue that a lot of people may have is the fact that a lot of these guys that were in jail when he pardoned them were more serious. We're more serious than the 700 that never received prison sentences or were already out. And so what he's doing then is, as a blanket pardon, he's pardoning those that did very little on that day versus those who attacked and assaulted police officers. They were pardoned the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's the concern that a lot of people have is, I get it, we want to pardon people and that we think are innocent or that were unjustly tried, but these guys legitimately attacked police officers and they pleaded guilty. So why are we pardoning people like that?
Okay. So I may have a more controversial take. Mm-hmm. And so if you disagree, that's totally fine. I'm always willing to listen and learn too. But my understanding is that is not the complete narrative, what you just said. Mm. First of all, we know for a fact now that the January 6th committee burned, recycled, threw away, destroyed a ton of J6 evidence, a ton. Mm. And they've been pardoned, by the way, preemptively pardoned.
Right, by Biden.
Before they could be held accountable.
Yeah.
If we wanted to get a fair trial, it's almost near impossible with all the evidence that's been destroyed. And by the way, this is all for partisan political reasons. They wanted to get Trump. So if these guys fall along the wayside, so be it.
Right.
It's like you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet, that kind of mentality. Mm. And so if you really wanted justice, I would say it'd be very difficult because also they were threatened to such a degree that if they didn't plead, a lot of these guys, what they're saying is, if they were threatened to such a degree that if they didn't plead guilty, then there would have been more severe consequences for them.
That's what I figured.
At least plead guilty.
Yeah.
And then your sentences would be like 5-10 years instead of a lifetime, which is insane. Yep. It's insane.
Yep.
And by attacking police officers, I also want to know, like, how did they attack them? What did they do? Did they push them? Does that deserve like 50 years in jail? You might agree or disagree with if for 50 years, but I don't think that's the point. The point is that these judges went above and beyond even the recommended sentencing for the crimes that they pled guilty to. So if they pled guilty and that crime, the recommended sentencing and what we saw throughout history was maybe 2 to 4 years, they would give them 8 because they thought this was such a heinous crime. That to me is political bias. And I think most people see what I see. And they saw that. Now, if you wanted to retry those cases, that's one thing. But these guys are already in jail for such a long time. They've been in jail for 4 years almost. So, someone that comes along and says, these guys have been so unfairly treated. Like normal prisoners would even get to see their families. They didn't get to see their families, a lot of them. They were like basically in isolation, solitary confinement. For what? For non-violent crimes too? That seems like a very extreme way of handling this. It's like, but J6 was like the worst thing that happened in history.
Right.
It's worse than the Holocaust is what some politicians are even saying, which they're insane. That's just insanity, right? It's worse than World War II. It's like, okay. It's worse than the Civil War. It's all right, you got to calm down. And so people like, even our former vice president would say ridiculous things like that kind of rhetoric, which is so dangerous and so inflammatory. But So here comes this president. He's seeing all this, and he's saying, you know what? If I take time to retry all these things with that missing evidence, with all this political drama, with all the news outlets that's going to blow everything up, and he could have made that political calculation. You know, it's more prudent for me to just release them all, just to give them all pardons. And just to say, you know what? They've been so unfairly treated as a whole because you treated them as a whole. So I'm going to also treat them as a whole.
I see.
And if he pardons them, that's his prerogative. And so that's what he did. Now you can agree or disagree with me on that one. You could say, you know, there's this one guy who I saw punched an officer. Why is he out? You know, you could disagree. We go, okay, you know. There's that one, but guess what? All of them, even the guys next to him. There was this Proud Boy leader who wasn't even at the Capitol that got, you know, jailed for like 20 some odd years for sedition, conspiracy.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't even there. And so they got him saying some stuff. It's like, man.
So what you're saying is that the narrative that I put out, which is from Legacy Media, is a false narrative. And so
it's not what people believe. Unless that's the only news source that you have. I'm sure people don't really read the news, so they'll just see headlines.
Yeah.
And the Legacy Media thrives on that. Just someone reading the headlines, and then you read like 24 paragraphs into it, and it's like, oh, this just disproved the headline. But they don't care, right? Because they could say, oh, we actually wrote it in our thing, so you can't sue us for libel or whatever it is.
So Nancy Pelosi said, it is shameful that the president has decided to make one of his top priorities the abandonment and betrayal of police officers who put their lives on the line to stop an attempt to subvert the peaceful transfer of power. Despite the president's decision, we must always remember the extraordinary courage and valor of the law enforcement heroes who stood in the breach and ensured that democracy survived on that dark day.
Nancy Pelosi is maybe one of the most corrupt government officials that we've ever had. If you look at even the things that she has said that she does, you know, about how her mom used to have a Rolodex and how she does that too, I guess now with computers. You ever read about that stuff?
No.
Anyway, and so you wanted to have some time with Nancy Pelosi. You come in. Let's say they still do the Rolodex. You know what Rolodex is?
I have no idea what that is.
It's like a little thing that with little index cards that you could put with a punch hole. You could put in this little binder.
Oh, like a library catalog.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Right? That's called a Rolodex.
Oh, okay.
And then let's say your name comes up. I go, Yang, Sam.
Yeah.
Pull it out. Sam Yang. He is a BDI. No. But I have a little description, and I turn it over, and then it'll be like, you know, he owes you $20 for lunch. He says he will pay you by March 15th. And so I'd be like, oh, Sam, I know you. You're the guy that owes me $20 for lunch. You said you pay by March 15th. What's up? And then you go, oh, it's about that. You know, I don't think I will pay you by March 15th. You know what? I'll do you a favor. I'll extend it 3 more months, but I'm going to raise it to $30. Okay, so thank you so much. Roll it. So a lot of mafia people do stuff like that. Anyway, she does stuff like she learned it from her mom. This is what she, you know, this is what her biographies, this is what she says in her biographies. Not only that, she and a bunch of other congressmen, and I'm not talking just about lefty or liberal or Democrat. I'm talking about a lot of Congress people, like even Republican Congress people. They use the information that they have to purchase stock, insider trading, right? So they know that they're going to, you know, AOC just said this in a recent interview with Jon Stewart.
She's going crazy these days, by the way.
2 days ago from our recording, which is insane. She literally admitted it. It's like, yeah, you know, they're voting on this law, and then they know that they're going to do this, and it's going to affect this industry or this business, and then they tell their people to buy the stock. It's like, you know what, you just confessed to. I mean, she's not very bright, so AOC literally just confessed on national TV that all these Congress people are insider traders. There's so much of that going on. We all knew it was true, but we didn't know someone would be dumb enough to say it out loud. But there she is. So in some ways, maybe we could be thankful for AOC. But this is the kind of person she is. So there is, speaking of Nancy Pelosi, there is a Twitter or X account that's called Nancy Pelosi Trades or something like that.
Yes.
As soon as she makes a trade, it comes up.
Yep.
And then it records it.
Yep.
So I showed it to one of my friends and I said, if you trade like this, you might make a lot of money. And he said, okay. So he actually took a chunk of his funds.
Yeah.
And he trades according to Nancy Pelosi. And I was like, how you doing? It's like, you know what? I'm up 8% today. It's
Wow.
and so these things are, there are two big famous ones. It's Nancy Pelosi's trades and Cramer opposite trades. There's this, financial analyst on TV, Jim Cramer. I'm sure if you know that he makes all these predictions and he gives all this advice, and this account does the opposite. So if he says buy, they sell. If he says sell, they buy.
Yeah.
And they're pretty much online with Nancy Pelosi's trades. That's how much money he's making. And the whole conspiracy is this Jim Cramer guy is just, when he tells you to buy, he's selling.
Yeah.
When he tells you to sell, he's buying your shares.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, those are things that we see. So people that are completely morally defunct are saying whatever they can say to get people to, or try to convince people of something. Like, look how righteous I am. But Nancy Pelosi has no leg to stand on.
But what you're saying is the narrative that we may be reading regarding the J6 convictions and all the trials and all that happened may not be an accurate depiction of what is actually out there in the news. And so what you're saying is that maybe we should do our own research and digging through not only legacy, but independent media as well.
Well, I'm saying it's very difficult to discern now with all the evidence that we know for a fact has been destroyed. Like, it's been recorded. People know that they've destroyed a ton of evidence. And so with all this happening and President Trump handing out this blanket pardon to the J6ers, I would think that I'd be hard-pressed to say, oh, this is just whatever Nancy Pelosi said. I was like, come on, Nancy Pelosi. Like, no one likes you anymore. No one even, trusts you, what you say. That's not even true. Now we even know, her daughter recorded her, during January 6th, about her pulling security from the Capitol and stuff like that. It's like, what are you doing? You have the authority to bring in more security. You can call the National Guard. And she didn't. And so whose fault is that? How come she gets zero blame for that? Her own daughter recorded it and put it up on the internet by accident, obviously.
So I could see people thinking, okay, I understand what you're saying, and I understand that, the narrative might be flipped or it might be kind of murky in many areas, but the fact that certain police officers got hurt, got attacked by individuals.
Who got hurt? Who got injured? Who got attacked? Do you know?
I think there was one that died.
Right. So that's a narrative that's coming out. And then, so look, you're not into this, but people that know. People are like, you see this one officer that died because of January 6th. The guy died of complications of some other thing, had nothing to do with January 6th, days after. But they're saying he died because of January 6th. How is that possible that we still hear this narrative that an officer actually died because of these January 6th rioters when his death had nothing to do with January 6th? How is that possible? It's because we continue. So, yeah, sure, more information might be good, but what if you're just louder and you just continue to scream lies? And people that want to know the truth will never know the truth. So I still hear it from people that an officer actually died because of January 6th. This is false. This is not true. He died days later, and it wasn't because of any injury that he sustained on January 6th. The only person that died on January 6th was Ashley Babbitt, and she was not an officer. She is a veteran that was on the other side, and she got shot in the face by a security guard inside the Capitol. Okay? That's the only person that died. And nobody talks about her.
That is interesting.
It is interesting because I talked about January 6th with a lot of folk and they all say the things that you say, and I'm saying that's just false. It's just patently false that he died because of January 6th. I don't know why President Biden keeps on spewing that lie, because either he is demented or just a pathological liar, or both. But he used that, and an officer died on January 6th. All these people are saying that this is just false. You just have to Google it. It's just false news. But people don't want to Google it. They'll just take people at their word. But it's especially bad if an authority figure like the president of the United States gives you this false narrative, false facts. Everything about this is false. And so this is quite unfortunate that all this false information is believed by so much of the public. And it's kind of sad, to be honest, that you have believed this whole time. Not you, I'm saying in general, you believed this whole time.
Yeah, the two people that passed from on, I guess, the defending side, if you will, were, yeah. Oh, sorry. The two people that passed, the 5 people that passed during the January 6th raid, if you will, was a military vet who was shot, who was Ashley Babbitt, a cop who collapsed while fending off rioters, and 3 protesters who perished from medical emergencies. And the U.S. Capitol Police officer also died after physically engaging with protesters, according to a report. That's interesting. But people can't say fully why he died, what he died from.
Yeah, I mean, the heart attacks were, even the coroner would reveal heart attacks were of natural causes. And this was days after the fact. It's not like on January 6th while it's going on.
Yeah, he didn't.
It's just false news. Yeah. And then, people had that suffer medical emergencies or things like, there's all these stuff that come out.
Right,
and then
right.
It's just so, it's very, very annoying. And, you want to trust Snopes, that's fine. I don't. You just have to do your own research now. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important, and I think good for us to continue to understand is we have to, again, do a lot of research.
Yeah.
Every legacy media will tell us that this person was. It's funny because even certain news news outlets said slain officer.
Yeah.
And that's not really the case.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how that's being portrayed. But thank you. That's helpful for us to know. I think that's a big one that a lot of people are talking about. But moving on with what Donald Trump has done in the past week, and we'll only do a couple more because I think time. How much time has passed, Brian?
A little over an hour.
Oh, okay. So one of the executive, just going over some other highlights of Trump's presidency thus far. One of the executive orders that he issued was aimed to redirect our country towards the correct view of male and female. This is from whitehouse.gov. It is the policy of the United States to recognize 2 sexes, male and female. These sexes are not changeable and are grounded in fundamental and incontrovertible. Is that the right? How do you pronounce it? Mm-hmm. Incontrovertible reality. Under my direction, the executive branch will enforce all sex protective laws to promote this reality, and the following definitions shall govern all executive interpretation of and application of federal law and administration policy. He then goes on to talk about what sex is. Women or woman and girls or girl shall mean adult and juvenile human females, respectively. Men or man and boys or boy shall mean adult and juvenile human males, respectively. Female means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large reproductive cell. Male means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the small reproductive cell. So here, the White House, the president, is defining male and female the way that it should be defined and saying that life begins at conception.
Yeah. I mean, it's not us that noticed. I think it was the lefty that noticed. Like, do you guys notice that through this EO, the president just granted personhood to fetuses.
At contraception. At conception.
But yeah, but I would add that the president didn't grant personhood. The president acknowledged personhood
Yep.
at conception. And so, I mean, he could have gone further. I think I would have wished he would have gotten further. But, I hope that people really do appreciate that sentiment that at conception, what you have is life.
And in that same in that same order, he talks about gender ideology, gender identity, and the fact that federal funds will now not be used to promote gender ideology. Each agency shall assess grant conditions and grantee preferences and ensure grant funds do not promote gender ideology.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad that it had to be said, but it had to be said. And this kind of reversal or going back to normalcy, what a blessing it is to go back to normal, where girls are girls and boys are boys. It's kind of crazy that it's almost like it was a nightmare the last 4 years.
And we're becoming like we're having common sense again.
Like, I don't know. I mean, we talked about where the Bible fits in all this, and like, the Bible fits in the most basic concepts, like male and female, he created them.
Yeah.
About how the Bible does, acknowledge personhood in the womb, about how you're punished for multiple deaths if you kill the mother and the baby in the womb.
Yep.
About how even John, by the way, if I were to, Brian preached an excellent sermon this morning. We're recording this on Saturday on infant baptism, but if you even record, one thing that you probably always want to do is you always want to, if you want to argue against somebody, you want to steel man that argument. You never want to straw man it. But one thing that you will see here that's if we were going to do this Baptist thing, but John the Baptist, by the power of the Holy Spirit or filled with the Holy Spirit, would leap inside Elizabeth's womb. Mm-hmm. And so babies, can be filled with the Holy Spirit because John the Baptist was. It wasn't like, he was Jesus or anything, but and babies are a person. Mm-hmm. They can be filled with the Holy Spirit. You know who can't be filled with the Holy Spirit? A cat, a dog, a plant. But you know who can? Human beings made in the image of God.
Yeah.
And so these are things that we get to see and acknowledge as a Christian. As a Christian, you can see this. And even naturally speaking, it's so obvious. It's so obvious the fact that we were going against natural order is the insanity of what we had been dealing with the last 4 years.
Moving right along, the president canceled DEI. This is from the White House website as well. Long-standing federal civil rights laws protect individual Americans from discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. These civil rights protections serve as a bedrock supporting equality of opportunity for all Americans. As president, I have a solemn duty to ensure that these laws are enforced for the benefit of all Americans. Yet today, roughly 60 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, critical and influential institutions of American society, including the federal government, major corporations, financial institutions, the medical industry, large commercial airlines, law enforcement agencies, and institutions of higher education have adopted and actively used dangerous, demeaning, and immoral race and sex-based preferences under the guise of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, DEIA, that can violate the civil rights laws of this nation. He has canceled DEI. You are now hired by merit. You cannot be hired because of your skin color. Excellence is now the metric in which you will be hired. That is pretty amazing. And so I remember we, a couple months ago, had even talked about the FAA and how pilots were being hired according to DEI. Now you have to be a good pilot to be hired by the FAA. Not by the FAA, but by airlines. That's pretty amazing. And he got rid of the affirmative action mandate in federal government hiring, which was started in 1965 from Executive Order 11246 by President Lyndon B. Johnson.
Yep, LBJ. There are no LBJs that are good. But
LeBron James.
There are no LBJs that are good, but
He's good at
this
basketball,
one.
I think.
There are no LBJs that are good, but this one was a bad one for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And so for him to get rid of that affirmative action in dealing with federal government was a spectacular thing. No one else had the guts to do it.
But what
he
if
did it?
What if Christians can say, well, it's because people of other skin colors and women and other races and other religions don't get the opportunity. As Christians, shouldn't we be loving?
So that's
the
not
stranger?
what this. So this is what they're gonna say. This is like, oh, so now we can discriminate. Oh,
Right,
so now
right,
we can
right.
only hire white people. That's
Right,
not
right,
what
right.
this executive order actually did. What it did was it made people have a quota, and this is not what we want. We do not want people to be hired based upon their race or ethnicity. We want people to be hired because of their merit.
Right.
If you do it in a reverse way, where you will hire people because of their race, both are wrong.
Yep.
Because they're white, that's wrong. But because they're not white, that's also wrong.
Yep.
And so getting rid of this executive order that LBJ put in from 1965 is a spectacular thing. And not just federal agencies, but any kind of federal-backed agency too. So then you'll see things like, oh, guess what? Government grants go to colleges, universities. And so we'll see how far-reaching this executive order is, this revocation of it at least is. And hopefully it will be to the betterment of our entire society where people will recognize like, oh, you know what? I need to actually work hard, work my tail off to get to where I need to or I want to be, not just continue to spout my intersectionality or say, like, I have a viewpoint that none of you have because I grew up in such and such environment. If that's the case, then prove it. Prove it with the merit. Maybe you did grow up in a different environment. So did J.D. Vance.
Yep.
And he proved it. He proved that he could be where he is and he has all the merit to be where he is. And so prove it along the way. No one's saying you can't be because you have a certain kind of upbringing or certain adversities that you had to face. But just because you face adversities, just because you had a certain upbringing, doesn't just all automatically qualify you for anything. You need to have the merit. You need to have the strength. You need to have the skills. You need to have the quality of character to be in the position that you are vying for. So I hope people recognize this, and I hope this is something that the generations will learn from going forward. And I don't know what to say about, the last 4 years, people going for, I don't know, the last 10 plus years, people going for, what do you call those positions? DEI positions or degrees. What's going to happen to the degrees?
I don't know.
Yeah, you shouldn't have done it. But if you have one, then it's not too late. I mean, might as well start now. Like get some skill in you.
So no more reverse racism, as they say. So no more racism and no more reverse racism as well. That's good.
I hope not. I hope not.
So
But I think it's, the EO is an EO. It's really up to the people to continue on.
Right.
Yeah.
Another action on Monday, January the 20th. In the one flag policy, Donald Trump issued a policy in which it barred all U.S. outposts at home and abroad from flying any other flag but the stars and stripes, including Pride and BLM flags. And this is from that policy. Starting immediately, only the United States of America flag is authorized to be flown or displayed at U.S. facilities, both domestic and abroad, and featured in U.S. government content. And it also stated that the flag of the United States of America united all Americans under the universal principles of justice, liberty, and democracy. These values, which are the bedrock of our great country, are shared by all American citizens, past and present. Any who violate will receive disciplinary actions, including termination of employment or contract or reassignment to their home agency. The only other flags that are permitted to fly are the prisoner of war missing in action emblem and the wrongful detainees flag, and that's it. Nothing else.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
Dun, dun,
What so
dun,
proudly we
dun,
hail.
dun. Yeah,
By the twilight's last gleaming.
yeah. It's
Whose broad stripes and bright stars?
no, I know the song.
Finish.
Through the perilous fight. I'm a English is my second language, so I don't know the I don't fully remember. I'd have to sing it. But this is the great thing. No more leftist agenda flags to be flown on U.S. government, U.S. facilities. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He also enacted an executive order enforcing the Hyde Amendment. And it reads, for nearly 5 decades, the Congress has annually enacted the Hyde Amendment and similar laws that prevent federal funding of elective abortion, reflecting a long-standing consensus that American taxpayers should not be forced to pay for that practice. However, the previous administration disregarded this established common sense policy by embedding forced taxpayer funding of elective abortions in a wide variety of federal programs. It is the policy of the United States, consistent with the Hyde Amendment, to end the forced use of federal taxpayer dollars to fund or promote elective abortion.
Yeah, what was the Hyde Amendment? It was like from 1977 or something like that, or 87. And you can't use federal or taxpayer dollars to fund abortions or anything close to abortions. It was one of those things where people thought was obvious. Obviously, you shouldn't. But then now we saw the whole, like Biden would use federal funding to fund abortions outside of the states. That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah.
It's not just inside the states, but even goes to outside the states. So one of the things that we got to see, and this is in line with the whole flag thing, is, if we are going to do something, promote something, if we're going to express something within the states, it should be the foundational principles of our states, not pride, not BLM, not abortion, but this is what's been being promoted by the previous administration overseas as well. This kind of insanity has to stop, and we have a president now that says the exact same sentiment. This is insanity. This is not common sense. This has to stop. So, signs an EO stopping that. I don't know how you can. I mean, if you're a Christian listening to this, how can you? Are you tired of the winning? I don't know what else to say. Winning so much here.
He did say we're going to win so much.
He did promise that, and he did it. In his inauguration speech, people are like, "Oh, did you hear that? He should have talked about like economics." It's like, I almost want to say, get out of my face with that. Like the dude said, "I believe God saved my life, and God saved my life to make America great again." So this is what he essentially said. God is the one that saved his life. He turned his head, so the bullet only hit, a fragment of his ear off. Or the bullet fragment only took a chunk of his ear off. And the reason why his life was saved had a purpose. And that purpose was to make America great again. And what does it mean to make America great again? By the way, he's not the only person or the presidential candidate said this too. By the way, Reagan also had pins, and he had mottos that said, make America great again. So Reagan also had MAGA stuff, but what does it mean to make America great again? And that is really to return to our founding principles.
Yep.
That's how you make America great again. And that's exactly, I think, the path that he's on, which I am very grateful for. No more non-American flags. I think when, Dr. Filson was here, he did mention how he went to Cambridge, right? Or something like that. And then he didn't see one British flag. All he saw were pride flags. And I thought he said something poignant that stayed with me was you got this LGBTQ to break down the walls, and then you have the Islamists kind of coming. I was thinking about that. We should definitely do a podcast on the Crusaders or the Crusades when did we stop calling them Mohammedans? When did they become Muslims? They were always Mohammedans. They followed the Prophet Muhammad. And so, this kind of rebranding that Islam is getting, it's kind of insane. Now there's Islamophobia.
Yep.
No one ever talks about Christian phobia. No one talks about Jewish phobia, but there's definitely Islamophobia. How is that even a thing that makes sense to anybody that has like 2 cents worth of brain or knows anything about history and how they're antithetical to Western values? So now we have two forces, basically. So this is what I kind of was been kind of rummaging through my mind is we basically have these two forces. One is this atheistic progressivism. By the way, progressivism and atheism, I think they're kind of one and the same. They tear down the walls, and then when you're vulnerable, what will come in a more powerful force, and that is Islam. And Islam taking over the Western countries is not something new. It happened in the past. That's why we had the first Crusades.
Yeah.
They took over Spain.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
They had people dragged by their entrails and around the city to show them, if you're not a Muslim, we're going to do this to you. And maybe you could be a slave. So sometimes they were slaves, but if you were defiant, they did that to you.
Yep.
And so these Christians, and they're not just all white. They're not all white. They're Christians. So white nationalism, get out of here with that too. But these Christians are like, these are our brothers and sisters that are suffering. We have to do something.
Yeah.
We have to do something. They were in Jerusalem getting brutalized. So they had to do something. And so if we ever did a podcast on the Crusades, I think that'll be a fun project for us.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be a long project. Both of us will have to do a lot more study than we have now. Maybe we've read 3 or 4 books, but I think we would have to do maybe like a dozen or more. But I definitely want to tackle something like this on. And just to think that now we have a president that recognizes that this is not only an inherent danger that we face, but this is just common sense. You are a government building. Why are you flying another flag?
Yep.
That it's not even synonymous. It's not even symbiotic with the American value system that we have. It's antithetical. And so why are we doing that? And so get rid of it. Great. I couldn't be happier. I seriously couldn't be happier that he did this. It should have been so evident. When Barack Obama put in the rainbow colors and put it against the White House when they allow for gay marriage, that was maybe one of the most, it should have been one of the most upsetting moments for a Christian of his entire tenure. But you know what's surprising? It wasn't. People were even convinced then, we should be more, compliant, obey the governor, obey the emperor. I heard stuff like that. Oh, we need to be winsome. We need to be compassionate. We need to have empathy. And then all these people just started talking about empathy. Empathy, saying that you have empathy while going against the word of God is demonic. I don't know what else to say now. I think it's pretty evident that it's demonic. So saying empathy overrides everything is a demonic position to take, because that's exactly what the devil would do as he destroys you. I bet Satan was very courteous to Jesus when he was giving the temptations. I bet he was very cordial and nice. But Jesus says, "Get away from me, Satan." Oh, Jesus, you're so mean. He was so respectful to you. Why don't you be respectful to him? I think that's what some Christians would say now. That's insanity. And so I hope people wake up.
I don't mean to take anything that you said not as serious, but you do a really good Christopher Walken just now. That was crazy. How did you do that?
I actually like Christopher Walken.
The way that you just talked was it sounded exactly like Christopher Walken. I was like, wait, what?
Maybe that's what I'm channeling my internal Christopher
I was
Walken.
like, wait, what the heck just happened? Yeah, I think that's really important for us to know. And again, as we go over these things, it's really for us to be equipped as Christians to know and see what's going on, and for us to respond and react appropriately. Because again, a lot of the conversation that we may be having in the workplace and maybe in our families might be not, agreeing with the things that we're talking about right now. And so just for us to be equipped to do so. One of the last ones, and we'll,
let me just offer a quick correction.
Oh, yes.
The Hyde Amendment was, what do you call it? Was passed on 1976.
Okay.
But I think it took effect on 1980. So 1976, not 1977.
But took effect in 80.
Yeah.
Another thing that President Trump did was he declared a national emergency at the border. And this was to protect the security and safety of United States citizens, to protect each of the states against invasion, and to uphold my duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. It is my responsibility as president to ensure that the illegal entry of aliens into the United States via the southern border be immediately and entirely stopped. Now, declaring a national emergency at the southern border means that armed forces will be deployed in obtaining complete operational control of the southern border. Additional physical barriers will be put up. Unmanned aerial systems will be used. Revision of policies, et cetera, et cetera. The strategies go on and on. But I think one of the things that people have been connecting, and this all goes in line again with the whole Hitler thing. And we're going to talk about Elon next, but it all goes hand in hand. The way that people are viewing this is people can even see this as when the Nazis rounded up the Jews and sent them to concentration camps. People think that rounding up people and sending them back home is a terrible tragedy. Even though Trump has said that the first ones to go are the criminals. Even though they're the criminals, we believe that rounding people up and sending them back home is a terrible, terrible thing for us to be doing.
Yeah, I think this is when ideology truly clouds any kind of simple judgment that you can make. Things like, if let's say someone commits a crime, and it's a pretty heinous crime, what's going to happen? And then, if you're more liberal, you're more progressive, it's like, oh, of course, we could put them in jail so that we could kind of, save them from society. Now the leftists are like, why would we put them in jail? Jails are, oppressive, whatever. But that's just insanity. But even that liberal, progressive thought. So what's going to happen? Let's take you, for example. Let's say you murder somebody.
Oh, man.
So you killed somebody. You're convicted. You're tried. You're convicted. Go to jail? So what are you going to do? For the rest of your life, we're going to pay for your shelter, your meals. So it's on my dime.
Right.
After you murdered somebody.
Right.
For me to feed you, clothe you, and shelter you.
Right.
It's like, what if he changes his life? What if he changes his life?
Yeah.
And so for that possibility, so these Christians are saying, oh, he could turn. Yeah, he could turn. It's not on you. That's on God. And if we put him on death row, maybe you'll change that too. Who's to say? But now it's my burden to take care of you. We have now, because people have been so confused, even with that simple notion, we've gone to even illegal invaders of our country who've come here breaking the law. By them coming here, they've broken the law. And them doing an additional crime, meaning they've committed additional crimes on top of crossing the border illegally. Mind you, because they crossed the border, someone else can't then. If someone keeps on crossing the border, then we can't keep on bringing other people. Maybe other people needed to come in. But now we have to stop that junk. And so guess what? People that were online, they're on a pause because of all these illegals that the previous administration took. So what about them now? Oh, so we have to also feed them? We should shelter them? We should clothe them for the rest of their lives in jail? Or should we deport them back to their country where they're from so their country can handle it? Because, what we saw in Argentina and stuff was that they're just emptying their jails and then sending him over to the States. And the president is there like, we're just going to empty our jails. We're going to say, get out of this
Not
country,
my problem.
or we'll
Yeah.
kill you. Because they're like, why should we spend our money? The president said the exact same thing that I'm saying. Why should we spend our money supporting you when you're destroying our country? We'll kill you, or you could get out of the country. And guess what? They all came to the States, and they're doing so much damage here with, the gangs that they're affiliated with and things like that. But Tren de Agua, right?
Yeah.
I think there's one of them that's pretty notable.
The Guatemala one, right?
Yeah,
No,
Gua-
I'm sorry. Is it Guatemala?
Tren de Agua or something. I don't know. Forgot what it's exactly called.
Yeah.
But there are a bunch of people.
Venezuela.
Venezuela. I meant Venezuela, not Argentina.
Yeah.
And so thanks for the correction. So, they're emptying their jails. And we can't send them back? We can't send them back? Is that what you're saying? We can't send these criminals back? Like, that's when ideology has so clouded your judgment that even the most basic things you're blind to now. And so you're just going to say, compassion, empathy, no matter what, empathy, no matter what. Because of what? Oh, because we don't deserve it. We were once slaveholders. And so you continue on with this ideology, continue on, putting mud in your eyeballs. And until one day you're like, you know what, let me wipe off the mud, and you still can't see. That's going to be a terrible, terrible time. But before that happens, I hope that you will take the gunk out of your eye and see that this is biblical. Actually, a biblical way of doing things. If you're a murderer, then you're done.
Yeah.
If you have some kind of, if you kill somebody by accident, there is actually cities of refuge.
Yes.
And this is something that I was talking with Dr. Filson about. It's like, cities and refuge is completely different from sanctuary cities. He's like, yeah, they're nothing like sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
Because it's true. The cities of refuge that you see in the Bible are nothing like the sanctuary cities now. The cities of refuge, you'd have to go there, you have to plead your case, and then you still had to stay there until the priest overseeing that city died. And so there were all these things that had to take place. And that was if you killed them by accident, by mistake. Like maybe you were, wielding a hammer and it flew out of your hand and killed somebody, then you'd run.
Yeah.
But if you killed them on purpose, you don't have a city of refuge. You don't have a sanctuary city to go to. There is no such thing as a sanctuary city in the Bible. So all these people that are saying, oh, it's biblical to have a sanctuary city. Don't you want to show, compassion? There's nowhere in the Bible that says it, actually.
Yeah.
And so you're just making stuff up and claiming that it's from the Bible when you haven't read it or studied it. And so it's quite, I would think, not just tragic, but I would think if you think along these lines, this is going against, this is antithetical to what the Bible is teaching. So by you claiming it is not only saying something that is against the Bible, you're claiming that the Bible is saying this. So you're either wrong and malicious in intent, or you're ignorant, which is, an ignoramus, which is, something that Paul writes against. You can't be these things if you're a Christian, is my point. And eventually you'll get to blasphemy. You just will, because you continue to speak out against the word of God, claiming that it is the word of God. I don't know how you will come or dig yourself out of that pit when you keep on digging deeper. And so I hope people that, say the things that you do, that you just said, they are saying, will recant, will turn around. This is not what we mean when we say we want to show compassion to the poor.
Yeah.
That is not showing compassion to the poor. That is actually destroying your own community in the name of compassion. That is not compassion. And so if you want to rightly show compassion, then I do believe that you need to study the entirety of the Bible.
Yeah.
Not just cherry pick what you want.
I think that's helpful for us to remember. Thank you for that. And for our last topic of the day, the one that everyone's been waiting for, is Elon Musk a Nazi?
So, yeah, I was thinking about that. I want to give my heart out to our viewers. I want to give my heart out to you. I want to give out my heart out to you. I want to give out my heart to the viewers, okay? So I give my heart out to all of you guys.
So did AOC, by the way.
Yeah, a lot of people did. people are saying that was the Roman salute, which was later adopted by the Nazis. Elon Musk might have been autistic. Elon Musk is a Nazi. Blah blah blah. All this stuff.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff going on. It's a much ado about nothing. And there was actually a TikTok trend. Someone said on TikTok, "I dare you. If you don't think Elon Musk did a Nazi salute, I dare you to do the same thing." And all these people are like, I give my heart out to you.
Yeah.
Not everything's a Nazi salute. And it's a Nazi salute if a Nazi does it. That's it. I mean, is Elon a Nazi? And obviously it's not. He's one of the biggest friends of Israel. Whether you agree with him or not, you might be like, well, he's too much of a friend to Israel. You might even think that. But that's where he is. He is an incredible friend to Israel. Netanyahu came out and said he's a great friend to Israel. All these Israelis came out. It's like he's done nothing Nazi-esque. In fact, last year he was at the Holocaust Memorial. He did that tour with a bunch of people, famously. And then there's a documentary on that last year. Yeah, he's not a Nazi. I don't know what to tell you. The fact that he just did some hand gesture doesn't make someone a Nazi. And so I wish people would get that out of their heads. I think Nazi is the cheap way out right now. You know what I mean? It's a cheap way to deal with things without actually dealing with it.
But so then why do you think, I guess what I'm more interested, because everyone knows that not everyone, I guess, but we know that Elon Musk is not a Nazi, but why do you think this picked up so much? Like, why do you think this just got sent? Like, it went everywhere. Like, why did it catch?
Some people are like, well, this was ill-advised for him to do, but, I think we have a trained aversion to Nazism in the States, but not in the same manner to communism. I think we should, rightfully so, hate Nazi. By the way, Nazi is short for National Socialist. So National Socialist. We should hate socialism too. Communism. We should hate it. But our upper echelons of education, our higher education systems are teaching us that socialism, we just did it wrong. We just need to do it well. We need to be Marxian to even a greater degree if we want it to work. This is not the Christian value. Same thing with the borders and stuff like that. You want a border because it is Christian to have a border. Yeah. It's Christian to actually have a property. It's Christian to have a boundary stone and not move it. Those are all Christian biblical values, right?
Yep.
To have no boundary stone would be nonsensical in the Christian worldview. It's Christian to not steal, meaning respect other people's property. That means it's Christian for us to acknowledge other people's property. It's implicit in do not steal. And so those are things that we don't teach. Even if you had a cursory, shallow view of Christianity, how about, acknowledging that? And so, I don't know why it picked up so much, other than there definitely is a hatred of Elon Musk after he unapologetically supported Trump.
Yeah.
And, people know that he put him over the line. Because of Elon Musk, Trump is president. People don't doubt that. He openly supported Trump, And so people are saying, oh, now oligarchs are ruling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just garbage. Obviously, that's garbage. Zuckerberg supported Biden before. Obviously, he's the one that also suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story when it came out on his social media feeds. And now he's blaming the government for it. And so there are people like that. And so these are all things that I guess we could talk further. I mean, it could be, I think there are multiple dimensions and multiple factors to why people are like this. But I think in the end, can I simply just reduce it to people like red herrings? Like, ooh, shiny. And then they like the red herring.
Yeah.
And so this is a nice little distraction from what Trump is doing that really is good, that the the majority of the population can get behind.
Yep.
The majority of the population could get behind all the executive orders and the presidential orders that Trump has done the last week.
Yeah. I mean, and thank you for that response. I think that's really helpful for us. And again, I think as Christians, it's important for us to not just go and flock to the red herring, and not to just, grab onto these big, titles and on the newspaper. What is it called? The
Headlines.
Headliners. Headlines. That we should diligently do our research, and that we would view all these things that are happening with a biblical lens. And I think that's really important for us as we continue to persevere. And that's the point of this podcast and this episode as well. Any other comments before we close this morning, Pastor Eugene?
Maybe we could close it with, I know that a lot of people that are listening to this, for the majority, align with what we've been saying over the past many years. That's why you've been listening to it. So I'm very thankful. Again, my heart goes out to you. But at the same time, when people disagree, I think we still need to have a kindness and a gentleness to our spirits as we disagree. I am not saying give them empathy in the way the world is saying, like by agreeing with them. You could disagree with those that disagree with us and saying, well, obviously, Elon Musk didn't do a Hitler salute.
Right.
You could say that, but you could do it in a way that is gentle instead of abrasive or even pugilistic, or And so that is not the way we want to disagree with people, but you should disagree. Is my point.
Yeah.
The fact that we disagree doesn't make us, that kind of. It's not a polemic that we're really putting out there. We're not really like trying to attack people. We're saying this idea is bad.
Yeah.
And so you may have people that believe that there are Christians that disagree with us, and they may genuinely think that is a Christian worldview to have. And you can disagree with that, but do it with gentleness and respect.
Yeah.
And that's what we're taught in the Bible. Do it with gentleness and respect. And so I get it that sometimes I come out here pretty aggressively, and that's because I want to attack the ideas. But anybody that's talked with me personally knows that, I don't attack you personally aggressively. No. In fact, when you talk to me one-on-one, hopefully it is with gentleness and respect. And because that's what we're taught in the Bible. So I hope that you will do the same when you talk to someone one-on-one, which is most likely the scenario and circumstance that you'll be in.
Yeah.
Is talk to them with gentleness and respect. But disagree with the bad idea. I'm not saying don't disagree. I am saying disagree, but do it with the gentleness and respect by defending what you see in the Bible. And that's hopefully what we're doing too, even when we talk about it in a broad sense.
Yeah. Thank you for that. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Stay tuned as we'll be continuing on updating you on the things that are happening. And like Pastor Eugene said, we will be coming out with a crusade episode soon. So stay tuned for that as well. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith.
Peace.